Hello, Friday. Right, let's start in the United States of America. MBA, Mortgage Bankers Association, refinance index and mortgage rates. Basically, the red line is your 30-year fixed, the amount of interest that you've got to pay on it, going back to 1990, and it's top left, bottom right, really coming down and down. Excuse me. And another record set this month. Under 4% for your 30-year fixed. Get out there and buy some real estate. And the blue is the right refi index, and I think that's the amount of refis that have been done. And again, obviously, lots of refis are being done, which means there's more money in the economy, isn't there? Because there is less interest being paid to banks and what have you. Right, I'm going to finish in Europe today, so Americans not interested in Europe can say goodbye for the week, goodbye for the week. Danish house prices plunged in the first quarter to a 7-year low as sellers slashed values to unload properties that had been on the market for a record high number of days. Denmark, still rated extremely highly, and I still look at it and go, okay, don't really understand that, but there we go. That was Denmark. Second part of Spanish banks audit to be delayed, and of course the audit came out yesterday, Thursday, and it came at about 60 billion. So what? A second and more detailed audit of Spanish banks will be delayed to September after originally being scheduled for completion on July the 31st, a source at the Bank of Spain said on Tuesday. Well, let's do it after the holidays, eh? Let's go on holiday first before the shit hits the fan. They're very fudgy in Europe, aren't they, really? Aren't they? How fudgy are they? Very fudgy indeed. Okay. Here's another bit of fudge. The European Central Bank is discussing a medium-term plan to scrap rating rules on Eurozone sovereign bonds and instead set their value when used as collateral in lending operations on its own internal assessment, central bank sources. The ECB, for instance, uses Standard & Poor's and Moody's sorts of ratings, the best 2 out of the 3. Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch. Best 2 out of the 3, but they don't like them anymore because they're not good enough. So they're going to drop that idea and do the ratings themselves. So we can have faith in that. Yeah. Okay. The main article that I really liked this week, this whole week, 22nd of June, just up in Vox EU, where you can read some pretty heavy dude stuff, but it's not that heavy. It's well readable. The Tragedy of the Commons, one of Mystic's favourite ever things, the Tragedy of the Commons. I've gone on about it for lots and lots of different things. Despite the recently announced €100 billion European Financial Stability Facility loan to Spain, that's not really decided yet if it's going to be EFSF or ESM. But it'll have to be EFSF if they want it quickly, because ESM hasn't been ratified by countries like Germany yet. I'll pick bits out because most people won't be as into. It's just I found this lovely. The whole article really nice, and it just appealed to me. I don't really expect it to appeal to you. So I'll pick out this one. The late great scholar of crises, Rudy Dornbusch, put it aptly: in a very rich country or area, let's have for here, you can afford to do very bad things for a very, very long time. Yeah, basically, in a rich sort of area, you can just screw up wildly before it is noticed, basically. I've mentioned it before as the momentum that you get from credibility, from, if not doing it right in the past, but doing it well enough that it's been successful. And that momentum rolls forward for a long, long, long time. You have to well screw up to screw up your own credibility. but the implication here is the EU are doing their darndest. Right, where should we go to? Their main problem that they see for the EU is deposit flight and the need to roll over government debt. Normal sort of stuff. Okay, go to the second to last paragraph, see if we can get something from that. No, they're just quoting other people's papers saying, look, we think the EU are going to get away with it, and this paper is saying, I don't think you will. We disagree. What ails the Eurozone is neither the ECB's lack of monetary expansion nor the multiple equilibria syndrome, but rather the tragedy of the commons. So I'd much prefer it to be the tragedy of the commons rather than the multiple equilibria syndrome, due to the fact I haven't a clue what the multiple equilibria syndrome is. Probably something to do with non-balanced economies or something, but I don't know. Right, let's go on to, I think this has got the rather nice description of what a tragedy of the commons is. Yeah, in the top paragraph. The tragedy of the commons concept has been used to explain the overgrazing of the commons, that's its original one, in the Middle Ages, the overfishing of oceans, capital flight, etc. In other words, you're going to do something that's logical for you, and lots of yous are going to do things that are logical for you, but overall bad for society, therefore rebounding back on all the yous as bad for all the yous. You got it? But individually, doing what you do, like a run on a bank, it's logical that you go and get your money out. But if everybody does it, it rebounds back because the bank falls necessarily. Same for overfishing oceans and grazing on commons, etc. Anywhere property rights are not strictly enforced, agents tend to overuse the common pool resources. Paying attention, now this is where you've got to pay attention because this is the crux of the matter, paying attention to the average rather than the marginal cost their actions place on society. In other words, you look at something and go, well, it doesn't matter if I just do that. What difference does it make if I just do that to the overall average of everything? But obviously, if everybody thinks like that, the whole average of everything goes wildly all over the place. Okay. Today we can see the tragedy of the commons transpiring in the euro system, where the ECB and the 17 national central banks share a common pool of money demand. The euro system is not a unitary textbook decision maker. The ECB is not like the Fed. Interest rates are set in a centralised fashion by the ECB's governing board, like the Fed. But each national central bank has de facto power over the expansion of central bank credit to banks in its jurisdiction. Individual countries' central banks still exist and are well powerful. Generally, a private bank can borrow from its national central bank. Yeah. A Greek bank can borrow from the Greek central bank, as long as the bank, one, is financially sound, has eligible collateral. What opens the door to the tragedy of the commons is the way in which these conditions are implemented, obviously, and then goes through them. I'll go back through them. Is financially sound. Would the Greek central bank or the Spanish central bank want to go, this bank is a bad bank, it must be closed down, and then all the repercussions fall back on the Spanish central bank and the Spanish government? Or does it go, no, it's fine, no worries? Has eligible collateral, and then goes, well, as long as you give me this collateral, I can give you all this cash, and then that'll make you look good, and then I won't have lied at all. What opens so this is what's happening, and the rest of the article is basically that. Have I got another one? I've just got a chart to come. So that is what's happening. Let's say in Spain, the Spanish central bank keeps its mouth shut about how bad they are, and then just takes absolutely anything as collateral and gives out cash. And to cover that, even the ECB's rules for the general central banks of the Eurozone region has lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered the acceptable collateral that is allowed, so that the individual central banks can do this. And then the individual central banks use their own imagination and lassitude to accept bus tickets and give out cash. So it gives us this chart in the end, 5C, central bank loans to banks. This is just one example of the way it goes wobbly on the tragedy of the commons. GNFL is Germany, Netherlands, Finland and Luxembourg. In other words, kind of core countries have been taking fewer loans from central banks. Going back to 07, they're taking less. They're only taking 100 billion, that'll be, when they used to take 300 billion. But the pigs, gips for them, because they're being politically correct, used to take under 100 billion like the core are now, but you can see the way it's going up and up and up. And it's one of these things where the banks are getting worse and worse, and so the individual central banks are just doling out more and more and more to cover up the naughtiness that they've been doing over the last few years, when they've been praying that the economy turns round. The economy hasn't turned round, the banks are getting worse, and they're just accepting less viable collateral and throwing out more and more of what is global Eurozone money, because these central banks are then linked by things like Target 2. But we won't go in for that. Right. It's Friday, so I'll leave you a Monty Python's video to look at as well before the footy tonight. Bye.